Hello and welcome to my channel, Distinctively Handcrafted. My name is Priscilla and I would like to thank all my new subscribers for coming to check me out and all my returning subscribers for spending some time with me. Alright everyone, so today I have a knitting tutorial for you, and this is going to show the technique magic loop in knitting. There is a technique in crochet with a similar name, so I would prefer to call it loop method. So in this tutorial I will be referring to it as the loop method. Okay, so pretty much the loop method in knitting is just allowing you to use a longer cord and knit in the round, and that is just one of the options for knitting in the round, and actually this is my favorite option. Another option is some very small circular 9-inch needles if you are planning on doing socks, or if you are doing another project. You could also use what they call double pointed needles, and this is when you use 4 of the needles to separate your stitches evenly and the 5th needle to knit them. A lot of people do like this method, and it is a really nice method to use once you get the hang of it, but it can get a little fidgety because you have so many of the needles going at the same time, or they're just there. So once you get used to it, it is pretty nice, but I do find this hard to begin a project from start to finish. I can pick up stitches and use these, but to do a project from start to finish, my favorite is the loop method. Okay, so I just wanted to explain a little bit about what the purpose of this is. All right, and a lot of people use this for sock knitting, or you can do anything that's a smaller circumference that you might not necessarily have a circular needle size for. So just like maybe baby hats, or and you can do also just anything in a round. That's the good thing about the loop, because you can make it as long or as small as you need. Alright, so the materials we'll need for this tutorial are a pair of knitting needles. For this tutorial I am using 15mm needles because I want you all to be able to see what I'm doing. Of course, you're going to use whatever materials you'll need to fit your project, but this is just practice, so if you want to go ahead and grab your bigger size needles to practice with, that is perfectly fine as well. Now your needles will need to be on a longer cord. This cord is actually 50 inches. You don't need it that long. This was the only cord I had available for my larger size needles. Probably like a 40-inch I like to work with, because that gives you enough cord on either side, and you'll see what I mean in a minute once we learn. But I usually like to use a 40-inch cord for my projects. Alright, you will also need a locking stitch marker and a ring stitch marker that will be big enough to fit over your needle. These are just for practicing. Once you get the hang of the technique, you won't necessarily need stitch markers anymore, but just to start out, I think that will be helpful to help you remember where you are in the technique. Okay, so the yarn I am using is just some scrap yarn. It is the Lion brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick, and this is a size 6 bulky, and that way you guys can see the stitches easier and what I'm doing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to cast on. I'm using the long tail cast on. Any cast on that you like that's just a basic cast on will be fine. I'll be using the long tail cast on to cast on 30 stitches. You do want to have an even number of stitches when you're doing the loop method technique, and that is because you have to divide your stitches evenly across each needle. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and cast on off camera, and then I will come back and we'll get started with the technique. Alright, so go ahead and cast on your 30 stitches and then meet me right back. Alright, and I made it back. So if you haven't yet, before we get started, if you could go ahead and hit that like button and also subscribe if you haven't, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. Alright, now that we have the 30 stitches cast on, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and grab our locking stitch marker, and we are going to mark this stitch here, the one that is connected to the tail, and that way we will know where we are in the technique. Okay, so go ahead and mark that stitch with your locking stitch marker. We're putting that there because we don't want it to move. Okay, we want it to stay there the whole time. Alright, the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and slide our stitches back just a little bit, and we're going to count over 15 stitches so that we can divide these evenly. Okay, so let's see, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 15. Okay, so you want to separate those stitches so that you can reach the cord, and then you're just going to pull that cord until the stitches are resting on the other needle. Alright. Okay, be careful so that you don't pull them all the way off of the needle. Alright. And so how this should be is the stitch you have marked should be resting on the back needle. Okay, so first of all, your needle should be facing towards the right if you are right-handed, and if you are left-handed, it will be towards the left. Okay, hopefully I'll be able to release these videos for both right and left-handed, so you can refer to the screen to help you with that. Okay, alright, so make sure they are pointing in this direction as you can see on the screen, and as I said before, if you're right-handed, they should be facing the right. Okay, now the stitch that we have marked should be on the back needle. So if you can see, we have a front needle and a back needle. Okay, this stitch marker should be on the back with your tail hanging down. Alright, so once you have that in that position, okay, and the rest of your cord will be on the opposite side of the directions that your needles are pointing, so that hopefully that makes sense for you. Okay, so once you have them set up in this manner, what we're going to do is we are going to carefully pull the back needle that has the stitch marker on it. We're going to pull that back and let the stitches rest on the cord. Alright, and you want to pull it enough so that you can have it turn towards the stitches on the front needle and be in position to get ready to knit those stitches. Alright, so you want to pull it enough so that you have a bit of cord on each side, and the cord will make a loop. So hopefully you can see that, and I guess this bigger cord is actually coming in handy because you can really see those loops on either side. So just to orient ourselves, we have the stitches that has the marked stitch is resting on the back part of the cord. We have these stitches in the front, and we are getting ready to knit those stitches with this needle from the back. Okay, so this is how we're going to get started. You just want to go ahead and once you have that like that, we're just going to go ahead and start knitting those stitches. Okay, I knit Portuguese style, so if this looks a little funny, that is probably why, but go ahead and knit that first stitch in the style that you use. I am just knitting the stitch, so however you do that, whether it's continental English style or Portuguese style. Alright, so all I did was knit that first stitch. Okay, so now you can see that it is forming a circle. Okay, and that is the purpose of this loop method, is so that we can knit in the round on small circumferences without having to use the other methods that I mentioned earlier in the video. Alright, so all we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and knit the rest of those stitches. So when you knit that second stitch though, you want to just tighten it up just a little bit, and that will keep from getting what they call a ladder. So that will keep these two stitches nice and tight together. Okay, so just snug it down just a little bit, and then go ahead and start knitting the rest of the stitches on your needle. Before we get to the last stitch, we're going to go ahead and put in our other stitch marker, okay, our ring stitch marker. So right before we get to this last stitch here, we're going to grab our ring stitch marker. Okay, so see how I have 2 stitches left on the needle, so I just want to knit that one, and now I'm going to grab my ring stitch marker here, and I'm just going to slide that on the needle. Now this will tell me that this is the first set of stitches that I am knitting. All right, and it's important because when you're first doing this technique, if you put the project down or something like that, you can get mixed up on where you are. At least I did when I first learned. So maybe you might be able to recognize where you are in the process, but for me, when I first started, it would have been helpful if I had used stitch markers. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and knit that last stitch, and that will just lock this in place and keep it from sliding along the cord and getting lost and not being of any purpose or use at all. Okay, so now you can see that since we have knit the stitches, the needle is facing the opposite direction in which we had started, right? And that is exactly how it should be, okay, because we are going to get ready to knit the back set of stitches. Now first we just need to set that needle down, okay, and then we're going to go ahead and turn our work so that it is facing in the original directions we had it when we started. Okay, and now you can see that this stitch marker is on the back needle. All right, so that means we have just knit that set of stitches, and now we're going to push forward that cord so that we're going to push that cord through the stitches so that our needle is going to have the stitches resting on it. Okay, so this is what that looks like. All right, now I can just go ahead and do that for you again if you would like. So if you need me to do that again, I will just do that really quickly. All right, so when we finish knitting, okay, this is what our work looked like. We had dropped the needle. All right, we are going to turn our work first, so that's facing in the original direction in which we had it. And then we are going to push the loose needle all the way through so that the stitches are now resting on the needle. All right, and you can rewind that and replay that part as many times as needed. Hopefully the stitch markers will help you. All right, so your ring stitch marker should now be in the back. Okay, here it is there. All right, and you will always have that one stitch there, and that's just to lock it in place. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to pull the needle out of the back stitches and allow those to rest on the cord, and now we will knit this set of stitches that are in the front. Okay, once we have knit these stitches, then that round will be complete. Okay, so we have not completed the round yet. All right, so let's go ahead and knit those stitches so that we can complete our round. And make sure when you get to that second stitch, even the first stitch, you can just kind of pull down or snug it up however you do yours. As I said, I do have a different knitting style, so it may look a little different, but just make sure you knit the stitches in the style that you are comfortable in. Okay, that is all I am doing, is knitting the stitches. All right, so we are almost through to the end here. So hopefully I am being clear in the directions. As you can see, we have the loops on either side, so we know we are doing this correctly. All right, and of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and I will do my best to help. And as I stated before, you can just go ahead and rewind the video as many times as you need in any section. Okay, all right, so we are on our last stitch, so we're gonna go ahead and knit that. All right, and then we could just drop this needle down, and then we're just gonna turn our work. Okay. Oops. I'm just gonna push those back a little bit because it's kind of on the tip there. Okay. So if you do have this long little bit, don't worry about that. It's just that when you do the next round, just tighten up just a little bit more, and then that will go away as you progress on in your project. Okay, so now you see that we are back at the beginning. We have our locking stitch marker on that back stitch, and that means we have completed one round of our knitting. Okay, so this is pretty much all we're gonna do. So I'll go ahead and do one more round with you so you can get a little bit more comfortable in completing the round with this technique, and then you can go ahead and feel free to keep practicing and rewind the video as needed. All right, so let's make sure we are oriented in the correct way. So we have our locking stitch marker in the back. Since we are starting a new round, that locking stitch marker should be in the back, and our needles should be facing the right if you are right-handed, or the left if you are left-handed. Okay, and now we are going to I will have the tutorials titled as left or right-handed, so make sure you are in the correct video for you in this process. Okay, and you can go ahead and look at the screen just to make sure that you have your needles pointed in the correct direction. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and push our cord through so that the front stitches are resting on our needle. All right, get them all on the needle because we're going to get ready to knit them. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and pull the needle from the back out, and we're going to allow those stitches to rest on the cord, and then we're going to turn that needle around and face towards the other stitches on the front needle. That way we can get ready to knit them. And now you can see we are back with a loop on each side of our work here, a loop of cord. So that is why it's the loop method here. All right, and then we are going to start knitting. All right, so this is the first stitch of our second round that we are going to start knitting. All right, and as I said, just make sure you snug that up, and that way you won't get a ladder in between your work. And a ladder is just sort of a wider space than what should be there because the tension wasn't tight enough, and that's all that is. So now we're just knitting across this first needle here. Oops, my stitches are a little bit tight. Okay, so there we go. All right, just knitting across. And when you come to that stitch marker, you just want to slide it and keep it there for a little while until you get used to the method. If you are actually working on a project, if they already require you to have stitch markers and you need to use these, just use a different color, and then that way you'll know what stitch marker is for what. Okay, so we're just going to slide that over and then go ahead and knit that last stitch on the needle. All right, and you should always have the same number of stitches on each needle for a basic loop method technique, because you want to have them divided evenly. All right, so you should be working with an even number and have the same number of stitches across the front and back. All right, so now that we finished that first row set of stitches, I should say, we just set our needle down and we turned our work to the original position, and now we are just going to feed that front needle all the way through so that our stitches are resting on it and that we can get ready to knit those. Okay, and once we knit these set, that'll be the finish of our second round. Okay, so let me get these on here. Alright, so now we're just going to go ahead and knit those. We should have our ring stitch marker on the back this time, and we're going to pull that needle out and turn it around so that we can start knitting the second set of stitches. Alright, we have our loop on either side, our loop of cord, and we are just going to knit in the round. Okay, so we have now finished our second round. So we're going to just drop that cord, that needle, and we're going to turn our work. Okay, so we have our locking stitch marker in the back now, and we're going to pull the needle that we dropped. We're just going to pull that cord so that the needle is going to be allowing the stitches to rest on it. Just like that, and now we are set to start our third round. Okay, so that is how you do the loop method, and as I stated before, this is great for if you're working on socks or other small projects that needs to go in the round and you don't want to use the other described methods that I talked about in the beginning of the video. Okay, so I really hope this was helpful to you. This is just a technique. I wasn't showing any pattern or anything, so you would just use this technique and follow the pattern instructions, but this is how you do the loop method. Okay, and if you have those stitch markers in place, if you put your project down, hopefully that will help you remember where you are in the project. Okay, if you have your locking stitch marker towards the back, you know you are beginning a new round. If your ring stitch marker is in the back, then you know you are needing to finish that second set of stitches before you finish the round. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense and is helpful to you. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to help you. All right, so please let me know if this tutorial was helpful to you, and if it was, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up. Also subscribe if you haven't, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.